Welcome everyone to my online course for research methods in psychology. My name is Frank Losciavo and I am your instructor. I have several things to discuss with you, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In this chapter, we've been discussing sources of information, and we've learned that information about human thought and behavior is most likely to be correct when that information is based on legitimate scientific research. So, where can we find legitimate scientific sources? In this video, I'll help you see that most scientific information about psychology is summarized in journal articles and in books. And I'll introduce you to a few search engines that enable us to find the research we need. Specifically, I'll demonstrate how to use PsycINFO, Google Scholar, and Ohio University's catalog for books, which is called ALICE. All right, let's get to work. First, let's discuss how most psychologists share their research results with the scientific community. In today's world, most people look for information by searching Google. Although that sounds like a reasonable thing to do, it's not the best strategy for finding legitimate, peer-reviewed, published scientific research. That's because research psychologists aren't typically focused on sharing their results via personal websites scattered across the internet. Generally speaking, after psychologists conduct research studies and write up their results, they want to publish their findings in scientific journals. For example, remember Stanley Milgram's research on obedience to authority? Back in 1963, he published his results in the Journal of Abnormal and Social Psychology. Scientific journals, my friends, publish the most current, the most prestigious, and the most cutting-edge peer-reviewed research reports you're going to find, period. All scientists want to publish their research, and they want to publish their research in the best journals possible. Let me show you another example. This is my Google Scholar profile. I've mentioned previously that I've published a few articles. I'm a relatively small fish when it comes to publishing articles, but this article right here has gotten a decent amount of attention. You can see that this article has been cited or referenced in 217 other articles. That means that the other researchers have found the article interesting, important, and they've written about it in their own articles. This particular article was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, which is a well-known journal in the field of social psychology. This is what the actual article looks like. This is what every researcher is working for, my friends. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it feels pretty good to see your name and your research published in a top-notch journal. So, long story short, scientific journals are where you're going to find the most important research in the field of psychology. It's not going to be posted on a personal website. It's going to be published in a journal. Not all journal articles have the same structure. This article is an empirical research article because it summarizes the results of several empirical research studies. This particular article summarizes 4 research studies. You might recall that empirical research is research in which data was obtained via observation and measurement. Remember, that's what science is all about, observing things and measuring things. But check out this article. It's a little different. I published this article a bit more recently in a journal called Frontiers in Psychology, which is an open access online journal. It has become the most cited journal in the field of psychology. That's a pretty big deal. Anyway, this article isn't an empirical article. In this article, I don't summarize a research study. I didn't collect any data. Instead, it's essentially an opinion-based article where I discuss one technique I've used for teaching research methods courses. These opinion pieces are less common in scientific journals. Most journals focus on publishing empirical articles, review articles, and meta-analytic articles. Because Frontiers in Psychology is an open access online journal, this article is available to everyone who has access to the internet. But this article that I showed you previously, the one that was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, it's hidden behind a paywall. In other words, universities and libraries around the world need to buy subscriptions to the journal so that their users can access the articles inside. And this is where you'll start to learn about the business of publishing. It didn't cost Mark, Jen, Shabo, or me anything to publish this paper. That's because the publishing costs were paid by the subscribers, the universities, and the libraries who paid a fee to access the journal. The system works differently when journals are open access. For example, people around the world can find this article and read it for free. So who paid the publishing costs? Take a guess. I did. Well, to be honest, Ohio University paid the publishing costs for me. So times are changing. More and more journals are becoming open access. That means authors are now more likely to be responsible for paying publishing fees, which is unfortunate because the fees are not cheap. When you catch research fever, maybe in graduate school, maybe sooner, you'll learn to love browsing through journals as you read the newest research in your area of specialization. Because legitimate scientific journals are peer-reviewed, and because they have high standards for what they'll publish, the research tends to be well-designed, the statistical analyses are often quite sophisticated, and the articles are usually well-written. I'm telling you, my friends, it's a joy to read a good journal article. Of course, books provide another source for scientific information. For example, Milgram discovered so much about obedience to authority that he shared it all within a book. In a prior video, I mentioned that books are often easier to read than journal articles. That's not always true, but it tends to be true for psychology. Empirical journal articles contain lots of detail about the methods the researchers used and the statistical analyses they conducted. I find that books don't usually include that same level of minute detail. Instead, they usually focus on the conclusions we can draw from the research. In other words, they tend to focus on what we've learned from the research, how it fits into the bigger picture, what it means for the field of psychology moving forward. And that can be refreshing. Although it's a joy to read a good journal article, it can be tough to read journal articles as well. I find that books that focus on psychological research tend to be less stressful, more relaxing, and easier to enjoy. It's interesting to note that many books focusing on psychological research are actually edited books. The word edited can be confusing because it can mean so many different things. But in this context, an edited book is a collection of individual chapters, each written by a different author. All the chapters focus on a common topic, but each chapter offers a unique perspective. For example, this book was edited by Thomas Blass. He was an expert on Milgram's obedience research. He put together a small group of other experts, and each contributed a chapter to the book. Here you can see the table of contents. That first chapter was actually written by Milgram's wife, which is unusual but really interesting. The other chapters were written by expert researchers. For example, Dr. Blass contributed the chapter I have highlighted in blue. It's entitled The Milgram Paradigm After 35 Years, Some Things We Now Know About Obedience to Authority. It looks like a fascinating book. If you wanted to read that book, how would you find it? I'll show you in a minute, but let me mention this first. During this video, I'm going to briefly, with emphasis on briefly, I'm going to briefly demonstrate how to use Alice, PsycINFO, and Google Scholar. So please don't expect an in-depth tutorial in this video. When in-depth tutorials are needed, I'll create separate videos for them. All right, let's discuss Alice first. Alice is Ohio University's online catalog system for books, periodicals, videos, etc. For the most part, you should see it as your primary resource for finding books. Alice is not an acronym. I've been told that the name is a reference to Alice in Wonderland, but that answer still leaves me wondering why. Anyway, let's do a few quick searches. I mentioned that I'd show you how to find this book, Obedience to Authority, edited by Thomas Blass. So let's start there. Because we know the title of the book, let's do a title search. The title begins with the words obedience to authority. Here we see the book, which we can see was edited by Thomas Blass. Let's click on that. And here we see that an electronic version of the book is available, so let's click. So with just a few clicks, we're looking at the book. And check this out. Here's that first chapter, which was written by Stanley Milgram's wife, and it looks like her last name is misspelled. That's strange. Let's do another Alice search. By default, Alice performs a keyword search. For example, let's enter a few keywords such as depression and students. And let's limit the search to the past 5 years or so. We'll enter that we want anything after 2018. Here are the results. If you see something interesting, you can click on it and get more information. We'll click on this one, entitled Handbook of School Mental Health. We can see that this is an edited book, and interestingly enough, two of the editors are Ohio University psychology faculty, Steve Evans and Julie Owens. We can scroll down and read a summary of the book. And because this source is available as an ebook, within just a few clicks, we can start reading it. That's amazing. My friends, consider spending some time playing with Alice. It's actually kind of fun. Searching for books is great, but journal articles are really our most important source for information. There are lots of research databases available, but one of the best for the field of psychology is PsycINFO. It indexes over 2,000 journals from 1864 to this year. That's a lot of information. Let's do a quick basic search. You'll see that as we type, various topics will appear. Let's search for articles about depression in college students. And let's limit the search to the past 5 years or so. We'll enter 2018 as the start date. Here are the results. Hundreds of hits, actually. Of course, if you see something interesting, you can click on it and get more information. Let's scroll down a bit. This article looks really interesting. It's entitled Suicidal Behavior, Depression, and Loneliness Among College Students, The Role of School Belonging. Let's click on it. We can scroll down and read an abstract of the article, and it's available full text, so we can click on it and start reading it. It's crazy how powerful PsycINFO is. With it, you have access to almost any article you need. My friends, you really need to play around with PsycINFO. It's awesome. And finally, let's take a quick look at Google Scholar. Google Scholar is not quite as awesome as PsycINFO. Like anything else, Google Scholar has its pros and its cons. One pro is that it's completely free and open to anyone. Alice can be searched by anyone, but you need to be affiliated with Ohio University to borrow books and to connect with electronic resources, such as the ebook that we found. The same is true of PsycINFO. I was able to use PsycINFO because I'm affiliated with Ohio University. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the same level of access. So Google Scholar provides great access to people who are not college professors or college students. That said, there are several cons as well. For example, Google Scholar isn't a database specifically for psychology. In fact, it contains articles from nearly any discipline you can imagine. That's a bit overwhelming. So you'll need to sort through lots of articles, and most of them won't be what you're looking for. Let's take a quick look and you'll see what I mean. Like before, let's search for articles about depression in college students. And let's limit the results to articles that have been published since 2019. You can see over here, there are still over 93,000 hits. That's somewhat ridiculous, don't you think? However, there are some tools that can be very helpful. For example, let's click on the first article to get some additional information. If we scroll down a little bit, we can read the abstract. And if we're interested in reading the article, we can click on Full Article. However, we'd need to pay quite a bit of money to download the PDF. So Google Scholar will often let us down if we're relying on it to find and actually read full-text articles. Some articles will be available for free, but you know how life works. The articles you really want won't be free. So I tend not to use Google Scholar very much. Well, that's it for this section, but stay tuned because I'll have more to say about research methods in the next video.